Genesis 1, chapter 1, verse 28. And God blessed them, and he said to them, be fruitful, multiply, replenish, subdue, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and over every living thing on the earth. That is the literal business blueprint. And so like when we talk about the scaling, it's already in the Bible. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Today for Tomorrow podcast. We got Mike back in the building. How you doing?
Team is back together.
Good. So, and we have a special subject to talk about today that is very much relevant to this individual over here. And I think you guys will enjoy it. There's going to be tons of gems, I believe, in this one again. We're back on the business series. I don't know if you guys remember, but like a few weeks ago, we were talking about marketing. Today, we're going to be talking about scaling, okay? So if you have a business, you're thinking about a business, or you're just wondering about business stuff, this is the episode for you. This is the series to be listening to. And so to start it off, what's on your mind, Mike?
So this is a very important subject. I'm glad that we revisit it, and it's very fresh on my mind. And it's funny because I've been having this conversation a couple of times, but I have one of my good friends that, you know, we've been kind of brainstorming ideas for where he's at in his business operation, and he's in the real estate industry like I'm in, and he's a little bit, we're at different points in our journey, you know, and so he was kind of asking me some questions about, you know, the acquisition, and I'm like, hey, I'm throwing fuel on his fire because I know how that feels. Like, you know, when I was coming up in the beginning, I remember one of the older wise people, they told me something I never forgot, man. It was like, listen, try to enjoy this time period as much as possible, because no matter how far you get, it's never, you'll never be able to replicate this feeling that you're feeling. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Because once you get past a certain threshold, it becomes more challenging to really find those wins that move you so much. And that's the thing that's tricky about not just real estate. This is really any industry. Like, you have to really move your focal point from what, you know, your initial trophy was, and you have to find different reasons to stay passionate about it. But going back to the original topic, just scaling, one of the main things that I really wanted to point, I told my friend, I said, listen, enjoy the come up. You know, the same advice that was given to me, I passed on to him. I said, however, make sure you strategize somewhere on the chessboard about once you get past acquisition and move into the stabilization phase. Mm-hmm. You know, and I threw out a quick example of, let's say you buy 10 properties, you knock your goals out for this year. You know, you bought 10 doors. Let's say you spend $50,000 a pop on average for those 10 doors. You know, okay, that's one cost. But then think about, to stabilize each of those properties, it's going to be an additional 40 to 50, maybe 70,000 each. And that's the part where most people don't, even myself, like, I knew it was coming, but I was so excited to just be grabbing doors and, oh, I got this, I got that. So now that I'm at the other phase where, all right, everything has to be stabilized, it's just something that most entrepreneurs of color, to be honest, most of us don't even get to this point. And so when we do get to this point, we're not prepared for it because we didn't really have anybody to talk to about. Yeah. So this is why I thought it was a good subject for us to just talk about the people, because in that vein, like, you know, we're dealing with it in real time. You know, you're scaling with FIC, things are growing, and, you know, different challenges and things are coming into the equation. You're scaling with your business. So I think we should just share some of the little nuggets that we've been acquiring along the way.
Yeah, no, you're right, because to your point, I think people look at the beginning like, hey, I'm gonna do this and this. Mm-hmm. But the process and how you, to your point, stabilize it. Because if it's not stabilized, it's not scaled, it becomes chaotic. You know, and just talking about the ministry for a minute, FIC. So yeah, we started out strictly virtual. So it was pretty straightforward. I mean, Martell was at the beginning, Mike, you've been there. And, so we started introducing different ministries. So that brought another element in. Me and Sherry dealing with it, got a few people helping here and there. Then you go in person. And you all both know, y'all been part of this too as well. It's like, okay, now it's like, okay, you got to expand the team.
Yeah.
Each one of you been kind of stepping up and doing different things, but it's like, hey, and even now, it's like, it got to go so much deeper where going back to comfort and everything else, you got to trust people and identify people who can, their gifts, where are they? Where can they be used? Where can they grow at? And it can't just be two people trying to do everything.
Yeah.
And that when we talk about scaling, that's what we're talking about. Scaling means that as things grow, you grow your support team in a way that it supports growth. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely. I mean, quite literally, it's increasing the volume. Yeah. And what I think people don't really realize is like sometimes if you haven't spent enough time kind of understanding what you really have, you might scale a problem. Mm-hmm. And I think that's when we talk about people who...
No, elaborate on that. Scaling the problem. Say.
Oh, yeah. No. Because, like, for example, when people talk about, oh, so-and-so got rich and then they changed on everybody, or they got real crazy, or this and that. It's like, no, who were they already? They just didn't have the money to do the things that they were already thinking of. They always wanted to do that. But they just, the mentality that they had was then now they've got more things to express more of themselves. And so they scaled it. And so when I think about this subject, I always go back to when we spoke about this before. It was back when we were at the, what's the name of the place that we were at? Incubizo. When we were at Incubizo. I go to Genesis 1, chapter 1, verse 28. And God blessed them and he said to them, be fruitful, multiply, replenish, subdue, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and over every living thing on the earth, okay? That is the literal business blueprint. Now, fruitful, that's finding your proof of concept in your product. You have a seed of an idea. You have a seed of this business that you want to build, right? Then you start to test it out. You realize, well, let's say I have a cookie shop. I give you a cookie, and you're like, oh, it's trash. Okay, I go back to the drawing board. I go make another cookie, right? I give you a cookie. You're like, oh, it's good. Okay, cool. But I think you could, add a little bit more on here. Okay, cool. Let me go back to the drawing board. I grab it. I put it together. I give both of you a cookie. You both say, this is the best cookie I've ever made. I've ever had. I say, okay, cool. We got something. This is my fruit, right? Mm-hmm. And now I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, now I need to get this to more people. What is my process for making more of these? Multiply. How do I multiply this? Because if it's just me making these cookies, I can't make that many cookies. You know what I mean? So I got to figure out, okay, what's the process? What's the blueprint so that I can go ahead and put these pieces in place and have more cookies, a higher volume of it before I can start to actually replenish, distribute, get it, fill up the market with my cookies. If I can't get from just me, then I can't get to the point where I'm actually filling up a market and definitely not getting dominating. And so like when we talk about the scaling, it's already in the Bible.
The biggest thing was scaling a problem. I really want to take a moment and just, spend time on this because I think a lot of us, we don't understand that this is even a thing. Because once again, we get so excited about an idea more. And we just want to run. But what if you're running 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction? Mm-hmm. And that's where we have to be open to wise counsel. We have to actually have a proof of concept. We have to be open to have constructive criticism because you need some trusted people to give you good feedback. Like, listen, if the cookie is trash, the best thing I can do is tell you.
Man.
Versus you spend all of this money and time and then the world tells you. Because the product is just sitting there and you're too deeply invested to pull back at this point.
The market gonna let you know.
That's really love. And so it's interesting because in real estate, we have this concept called pre-development. Mm-hmm. So this is before we ever put a shovel in the ground to do any type of digging. We spend months, sometimes years in pre-development, and we're going through so many stress tests. We're going through all types of scenarios. We're trying to plan for any and everything that possibly could come up. And if it does come up, how are we going to navigate either through it or around it and basically be able to get to a solution? And this is a part where we have to spend more time in pre-development with these ideas and really vet out what we're bringing to the market.
A good tree produces good fruit.
Yep.
You ain't even test your fruit yet. How in the world you think you about to do all these grand things? Like, seriously, go ahead.
No, but that's what you guys are saying is right on point, because people will go out and they will make major investments.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Major investments on an unproven thing. Like you said, that pre-work, and even looking at the numbers, right? Just to see if it's even sustainable. We haven't even talked about the numbers yet.
Got whole life savings for this.
Yeah.
Because they'll invest in all this thing and haven't sold one piece yet.
Yeah. And another
Shark Tank.
Right. And another thing with our culture today, we have to get away from this term, using this term so much of, they're hating on us. If somebody's giving you constructive criticism that happens to not align with your original thought, that's not necessarily hate. It could actually be a blessing. And that's where we just have to change our thought process. Another point that I was thinking of, it's a book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There.
I've heard of this, yeah.
And it's a concept that it's hard for you to think about that point because you're so enthralled with getting actually a proof of concept and getting over that initial hump. And, once again, in our community specifically, about 90% of us usually stay in this area. Another book is called From Good to Great. And it talks about how when you're trying to look for a specific improvement, it takes like a surgeon-like mentality. You can increase and multiply in the initial 70 to 80%, and it's easy. Let's say working out, for example. If you're obesely overweight, for you to lose 50 pounds, that may not be you may not have to change a lot.
Yeah.
Just push the dessert away after dinner. That might, over time, that might do a major impact. But once you've hit a certain threshold, for you to see some type of change, you're going to have to really dig in. You may have to change the way you sleep. You may have to change the people you associate with because they always pushing the plate in front of you. You may have to change, you definitely have to change the way you think. It's so much that has to change in order for you to get past that initial threshold.
Yeah.
I was thinking it's so interesting because it's like I got this concept, I call it the scaling point. Don't tell anybody. I'm gonna write a book about it. But so what I do is literally video advertising. And so I am very much familiar with looking at the numbers, understanding what the numbers are and what numbers actually put you in a position to actually scale something. And so what I'm talking about in particular is ads. So first off, not every business, just because you have customers, is at a point where you can actually advertise, because some people aren't just ready for it. I even tested this out literally just to see what would happen with a business that wasn't at that point. And I saw the result of it. And so the reality is though, when you have an ad, okay, and I'm about to give you the blueprint. When you have an ad, just like Mike is saying, you got to test certain things, okay? You might have in terms of an ad, you have the hook, you have the core, and you have the call to action, okay? And so you put it out in the market, you test a certain audience, you test, okay, well let's try it like this, or let's say this at the beginning, or let's connect this landing page for this ad, and let's see if it matches well, or if people start to move down. And so the thing is, if you don't have a certain number or a certain volume of people actually clicking the ad, then you'll never be able to test your landing page. Okay, so say you get people to actually click on the ad, watch it, and go through the next page. But then you've got people coming to the landing page, but you notice that people aren't taking the next step and buying the actual thing. Okay, so now we know that there's an issue with the landing page. So we change up the landing page, we test it out again, we got the ad going, we know that's good. People are coming through. The landing page is getting people through. And now this last step right here, okay, our conversion point is a little bit too low. It's about like 5%. We're trying to get it about 20. So now we test this. Okay, what's our sales process? Okay, well, maybe we should say this in our script, or maybe let's just wipe out the team, put a new team in there and see what happens then. And then you put all the pieces in place because you've tested it. You've tested each variable. You know that it's gotten proof of concept at each part at a sustainable point or at a number that you're like, we can work with this. Now, since you have the variables working right, you can scale it. AKA, we're going to increase the volume. We're going to put more towards this ad. We're going to put more people through the system because we know that these numbers should stay the same. That's the scaling point. And it's you can translate that same kind of analogy, that same kind of process to whatever you're doing that you want to do more of, because that's literally the process of scaling.
But the point you made, and I'm going to go back to something Mike said too, the steps.
There's steps.
There's steps. And Mike, I'm going to use this term, the process. There's a process you got to go through.
Definitely.
And if you skip steps in the process, you're not going to be able to scale. You're gonna fail in some form or fashion. Now, you might be successful to a certain level, and people on the outside might be like, hey, you're doing great, but you miss out on the opportunity that's probably 10 times more than where you at, is what I'm saying.
You just reminded me of something. And a very important part of that is say you got a $2,000 budget. I'm not running $2,000 on the test. We gonna run $10 a day until I test this ad. And then we gonna do $10 a day until I test the landing page and the sales process. And then at the point where, like you were just saying, at the point where we know certain things, that's when we increase the volume. I'm not gonna have the investors come in and pour in $100,000 on this project that I don't even know if anybody wants. Come on, man.
Yeah. So another part that I know that we definitely have to touch on as far as scalability is building a team. You know, that's a very, can be a complex part of the whole entity, right? Because, you know, it inserts the people element. So you have humanness, you have just some of our flaws, some of the emotions. And the biggest thing is you have to have a vetting system when you're looking to add to your team. You know, in the beginning, I always try to encourage people, utilize your core people that you can bounce ideas off, you can, you know, glean wisdom from, where you don't necessarily have to pay them for that type of stuff. Do as much as you can, you know, for free before you start adding people on payroll, because that brings a whole different element. You know, that payroll, I could do a whole podcast on that. That'll keep you up at night.
Yeah. And all that, those are costs that people don't see.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And like, and those costs, when you make that investment, like Martell talked about the whole $10, and so you prove it out, and then you go and you say, okay, this works. Now I can increase it. But like you talked about, getting the right people in place, because if you increase that payroll and you hire these individuals to come on board to do A, B, C, and D, and they're not working out, you committed to that cost. At least till that project's done. You can cut them in the end, but the point though is that that's lost money. Now you got to get somebody else in to pay the same. So you got to, in the same sense, you probably do this too. You probably give them a small opportunity, test them out, the vetting process you're talking about. And the same thing, I mean, you know, you can take it to the ministry too. It's like you give people something to do, and you kind of see how they do that. Well, if they can't show up on time, I can't rely on them to open up the church. You know what I'm saying?
They got the key.
Yeah, you know, it's because there's, I'll be here. You know, can you open up? And
everybody waiting at the door.
Yeah. So, you know, you like, well, okay. They good at this part, but I can't do that part.
They will greet their face.
Yeah, but that person over there, they always early and they willing to do it. That's the person who need to open up. You know what I mean? So you kind of got to go through, but you give them a small thing. Then you say, okay, well, you know, you see what other things they can do, and then you grow that way. But everybody, I guess here's the other thing. There's gonna be letdowns. People are gonna let us down. And to be honest, we've probably let some people down too. But the point though is that that's all part of the process. You can't get frustrated by it. You can't throw somebody away because they let you down one time. You might have put them in the wrong situation. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So when you're running a business, one of the analogies I like to correlate it to is you're like the ultimate coach of a sports team. And the best piece of advice, I think Michael Lucas actually told me this, best piece of advice when you're coaching anyone, you have to take the time and you have to figure out what those individuals' goals are. If their goals align with the greater goal of the entity and you guys can help create a win-win type of situation, that's ultimately how you're going to create a loyal, productive team. If you're trying to plug people into positions like for your example, Rodney, where this is a square peg I'm trying to put into a round hole, and then I'm getting frustrated. Why is this not working? Why are they not? Because a lot of times we gotta put that back on ourselves. We can't point the finger at them for being a fish out of water. Why can't you fly like a bird? It's a fish. Let it be a fish, and let it swim, let it do what it does well. And then we'll go find a bird to go fly.
Yeah, and we laugh at that, but that's real. That's a great analogy. We're constantly trying to put people in the wrong place and force it in there.
Because a lot of times we operate with our human vision. And this is another part where, when we talk business and people want to talk about the successes and I point them back to where their stage is. I say, let's not skip to right now. Let's go back to wherever it is relevant to where you're at because it'll hit more. And then number two, I lost it. It'll come back to me. It'll come back to me.
I was on it.
It was a good one too. It was a good one. Yeah, it'll come back to me though.
Dang. He's about to jump in there.
Yeah.
He was all round on Mike. He's like,
that was, the crazy thing, that was the main point. I added a little extra, and that's where it took me down a whole different path, yo. Dang, it'll come back.
If they roll the tape back, I was like, okay, let's go. Talking about that.
So man, but I mean, the points though are all like hot because they right there, they real, right? Because that whole piece, about dealing with people and putting them in the wrong situation, and actually, when you talked about the individual who was like, "Now, don't tell me, I know you're right here, but tell me about where you at right now." The successes, I think that's where people get hung up on successes, and they'll ride that out, but it's like you're not there right now.
Yeah.
You're in a different place right now. What got you there was different than what you're doing right now. And,
that's what so the concept for building anything worthwhile, I always lead with, I'm spiritually based. I can't give you an exact blueprint on, okay, I did this and this is why that worked. Or when I did this is exactly why that worked. You have to trust your discernment. You have to be in touch with, for us, it's God, but whatever your higher power is, I always recommend God because he's going to tell you and notify you when you're in a situation. It's like, you know what, this is not where I'm supposed to be. When I was fully in the word, I would say my instincts. I rely on my instincts. But it's just God. It's just being your spiritual navigational system.
That's the Holy Spirit. And that's the Holy Spirit talking to you. Who is God? So, we all on the same page. We know that's who direct us. That's where we get our direction from. And I'll be honest, if your direction coming from something else, it's not going to feel or be the same. I'm just being real.
Yeah.
No, I would, I'm glad that you found the point. I was going to say that this might have jogged your memory because you were talking about, what Rodney was saying was like how when you bring in a volunteer, not everybody is good at everything. Not everybody wants to do everything.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I told you this process that I kind of had when I'm bringing on like contractors, somebody who's going to do editing, someone who's going to do, processes, things like that. There's a real life trial period. Like everybody, you don't get the full contract, These are the set of projects and this is the timeline for which they should be done. And here's the process. But here's the thing. I've seen people where they try to plug somebody into place. They say like, okay, you know, I need a VA, and I'm gonna hire 5 VAs because I just got a whole lot of stuff to do, and I'm gonna just hand it to them, right? And so what they do is they go online because the guru told them, all you got to do is to go to Upwork and then the onlinejobs.ph, and you can find all of the VAs, and they'll work for $3 an hour, and they'll work full time. This is what they believe, okay? And they go on here, they find the VAs, they have the conversation like, yeah, I got a business and I want to hire you. They're like, okay, you got money, I'll take it. And then that's how that whole conversation goes. Yeah. Now the person comes into place and they say, okay, so now I got these things. I just want you to do this for me. They hand the person no process. The person has no idea what outcome you're looking for. Yeah. They don't know what this even looks like because you've been doing everything right off the top of your head. So it's like your whole business model is right here. It's not on paper. It's not documented. It's not in process. It's not structured. You can't hand somebody the blueprint for them to actually do it and get the same result as you because everything that you've been doing has only been up to you. Yeah. And so it's like putting somebody in place. A lot of people scaling, we're talking about the point of scaling. You are not at the point of scaling if you don't have a process that you can hand to somebody.
Yeah. A vetted process. And if I had one piece of advice, just one nugget, I would just say, spend a tremendous amount of time on always working your process and reworking the process because it's kind of like a resume. You know, it's a living entity where you're never really done with your resume.
No, it's evolving.
It's always evolving. You always have to always be willing and open to adjusting it and changing because you're going to get new information. Times are going to change. People are going to change. And you have to be adaptive.
Technology, environment. I mean, you think about you're in real estate. If the laws change or the codes change, then your business changes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's just reality.
100%.
Now, I know we get into that point, though, so how do we put a wrap on this and kind of close it out? Because man, I love this conversation, though, because it almost seems like we need to get into some more because it is a big stumbling block for any business, whether it be church-related items, whether it be your life, period, you know,
life,
family even. I mean, you know, so it's just, you can plug it in everything. But how do we close it? How do we give people some stuff to kind of go off, summarize? Because you hit process, hit some other things. What can we tell them to say, hey, this is what we recommend you do to get on point?
Let's give them a few criteria before they can say that they're at the scaling point. Because some people might believe that they are just because they've got things going well, right? But there's certain like things that you need to be able to say with confidence before you can say, all right, we're increasing and call the investors, we going all in. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So my one thing for that is it'll go back to proof of concept. Have you completely exhausted all scenarios that you can think of? Kind of like when I was talking about pre-development, where you have to put on your own internal stress test before the world gets a hold of it. Because if you take hits, you know, like with my kids, for example, I have them in, you know, wrestling. They've done boxing a little bit. Now they're in jiu-jitsu training. I want them to feel what it feels like to take actual hits, to give actual hits, to learn discipline in a controlled environment. I don't want them to go into the world and something escalates, they get into a real fight and somebody falls because they don't know how to fall, hits their head on the concrete, and you know it's catastrophic. Yeah. You want to be able to stress test different things because ultimately it's going to help you strengthen your process if you allow it to do so.
Yeah. That you need to replay that. Just go back, get that one again. But if I was gonna put a nugget on this as well, I would say, one, don't romanticize the idea, okay? Because the reality is you might have been going crazy you thought that you was gonna be the cookie person. You thought you was gonna make this multi-billion-dollar cookie business. But the reality is you ain't never made a good cookie. You might be great at making tacos. like don't be so attached to it, because I think this is a big thing that people do is they say, oh, well, I've got these skills, so therefore I'm going to be big in this area, or I'm going to do this particular type of business, but they have never tested it against the actual market. The market is going to tell you the reality. If they don't like that, you don't have good fruit. You cannot scale. Okay. Yeah. Don't be so attached to the idea that you're like, no, I'm going to make them like it. I'm going to make them on it. You will be that person who after 40, 50 years of trying the same thing, you have never really reached even close to the success that you thought you were in the beginning.
Man, and I think to add to what you guys said, I'm going to bring it back to you with the ministry. It's like when Sherry and I went into this, we said, look, you know what? This is how much we have to operate from what we have. And we can sustain this for 6 months without anybody contributing a dime. If God wants this to work, then he'll make it work. And the point I'm getting at is that you got to go into it with the fact of how much are you willing to invest and understand that, you know, you don't want to make it a perpetual thing where you just throwing good money after bad. Have a threshold and say, okay, that proof of concept, the whole thing, go out there. If it's working, it's working. If it's not, you got to shut it down and do something different, maybe. Yeah. You know, don't dig a hole for yourself.
Yeah.
Don't dig a hole.
I know I said I had one point, but I'm like, I like this cookie analogy, because what I was thinking about is you have to have realistic expectations also. And you have to use market data, because in my mind, the cookie industry, I got to sell a whole lot of cookies to make a profit.
Oh my gosh.
And I find that a lot with conversations that I have with people where they have these intricate ideas and they have these huge plans for this new industry that they're going to bring to the market. And I'm like, yo, it sounds good. Show me the data. I base everything off the nut. I want to see, because when I was making my decision and I knew what type of lifestyle I wanted to live, I chose an industry that I knew was already yielding X amount in returns on investments. And so that's the biggest thing, is use data to help make your decisions, not just your imagination.
The reality is the people who at that point that you're trying to get to, they making data-driven decisions.
They are.
So if you want to get there, you need to start that.
We definitely need to come back to this one.
Yeah.
I think but hey, let's put it, cross that T, dot that I, close this out, because we want y'all to come back for the next installment on this one.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Thou shalt know thy numbers.
Yes.
100%.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Today for Tomorrow podcast. If you have not already subscribed, we'd definitely appreciate if you go ahead and do that, okay? And just a few housekeeping items here. You want to kick us off?
Sure. Hey, man, we got Man 2.0, second Saturday every month. Come on out, Southfield, Michigan, if you're in this area, 28202 Franklin Road. Come join us. You can also come join us for service. Hey, we're at the Freedom Center. We have service here every Sunday at 11:30 as well. Come on Saturday, man, learn what God's telling us to do as far as manhood. And trust me, you won't regret it. And you come back on Sunday and get fed the word. Check us out.
Come check us out on IG at DetroitInvestor_WCI. We're showing all things real estate. We're showing how to be a family man, raising 4 boys. So come check it out.
Check out what they said to check out. Information is below to do that. I hope to see y'all next week. The information is below. If you have not already subscribed, I said it. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Share it with somebody who you know this is going to help. I know if you felt like you got something from this episode, it is your obligation to share it with someone who you think could benefit from it as well. All right? Do that. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope to see y'all next week.
Peace.